Habari family, and welcome once again to another round of culturally conscious communications here on Afrikha Roots Network, a Pan-African digital platform presented by Utheri Film and TV Productions, connecting Africa and the global African family through history, consciousness, culture, sovereignty, and human development. My name is Awadu, also known as the Conscious Rasta, founder of LIB Radio and the ConsciousRastaPress.com. Welcome to another round of the Conscious Rasta Report. Today, the theme of the program is a multi-pronged assault on Azania, South Africa. Where are we at? I have a bunch of papers up. Okay, here it is, Assault on Azania. Today, the Conscious Rasta Report examines the multi-pronged assault on South Africa, Azania, where internal challenges intersect with external pressures from powerful global actors. We unpack narratives surrounding xenophobia, contested claims of white genocide, and the most recent HIV/AIDS messaging campaigns, questioning whose interests are served and how perceptions management, geopolitics, and economic agendas converge to destabilize South Africa's sovereignty and social cohesion in real time. Game theory for master's level study allows us a tool set, a language to be able to look at what is happening in real time and to decode if there is organized opposition, what are their aims, what are their goals, how can we use the resources we already controlled or might soon control with deliberate strategic plan to offset those self-interests. We're going to do the best we can with what we've got. First of all, I want to send greetings to you, the listening audience in the house. I see 4, Africa 1, Hotep, Brother Keidi, and Global Alibi Family, Ubuntu. And I believe you were one of the influences for today's topic. I did put this together, the initial of this together yesterday for the mastermind. And I tell you, it hasn't been easy. I've been working so hard this morning, and I did pretty good use of my time. I didn't even have time to fix myself tea. I did get all my exercise in today. I got to get that in every day. And so we're going to do a good job today. I think you're going to be very proud of me. For Africa 1, my sister Singai is in the house. Akwaba, welcome. It is a pleasure to be with you. And I know those of you listening today, you will be checking in. We encourage you to check in and let us know that you're in the house. Brother Daoudi, Brother Shabaka, and Guvu, Brother, so many of you, so many. I dare not say the names because I will inevitably miss someone. And Queen Mother Kashiba, we also welcome you into this house. This is your house. Let's begin to dissect this. Let's share it with the window. Let's share a monitor window over here. So I'm going to go over here to window, and no, it's not a window, it's a tab. Notebook LM. I'm sharing also audio with tab. It's supposed to be playing. Let's try it one more time. Well, I can do this. Let me do this. I'm going to go into problem solving, and I have the audio isolated over here. Where is it? Problem solving. It is an audio file. I don't have it here. So let's just go into the text for today. I have a lot of research, a lot of text, and I don't have a clue why you could not hear the audio, but we do the best we can. What I am going to do is I'm going to share a screen over here, and this is the text, the briefing text that I put on today's program and start screen share. This is going to be the window, and here is where we are. And this is entitled Geopolitical and Social Medical Crises in South Africa, a comprehensive briefing. Now, let's go forward. I need to enlarge this just a little bit, if you don't mind. And it's not enlarging. Bear with me. There we go. All right. Executive summary again. Geopolitical and social medical crises in South Africa, a comprehensive briefing. Executive summary. South Africa currently navigates a complex convergence of external interventions, diplomatic friction, and internal social medical challenges. Central to these tensions are the controversial activities of Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, whose agricultural and medical programs face accusations of biopiracy and ethical violations. Simultaneously, South Africa's leading role in the International Court of Justice case against Israel has triggered a diplomatic counter-offensive, with Israel employing, quote, divide and rule strategies, unquote, within the Southern African Development Community, SADC. Internally, the nation is grappling with a resurgence of anti-immigrant sentiment, which the government frames as a continental migration crisis rather than, quote, xenophobia, unquote, and a historical legacy of disputed HIV/AIDS data, while the country moves toward a 6-month injectable HIV prevention regimen, lenacapavir, oof, that's a lot of syllables, lenacapavir, to end the epidemic by 2043. As they are doing this new injection program, the shadow of Rian Milan's 2003 critiques regarding, quote, AIDS deceptive mathematics remains a point of historical contention. These factors, combined with South Africa's status as a regional economic superpower, are reshaping the future of SADC and the broader African Union landscape. So let's take this apart little by little. Now, with this new injection protocol that is proposed, and they're calling it LEN, L-E-N, is a friendly name for an unfriendly pharmaceutical intervention. But with this new intervention, we're looking at who is donating this, who is paying for it. And we see that the number one private philanthropy is our old buddies, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. We're talking about Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation's 2-decade-long, $6 billion investment in Africa is under intense scrutiny. And we did scrutinize that very intensely in this book of mine, which I just threw on the floor. This book, you'd have to know about the book. Many of you have the book already. The book is entitled Biocolonialism, the Technocratic War on African Fertility and Food. Yes, Bill and Melinda Gates were coming after Africa's food and fertility. We'll get into that. Their 2-decades-long assault has come under intense scrutiny. Critics argue that these philanthropic efforts often bypass local agency in favor of philanthrocapitalism, yet sometimes yielding detrimental results for the populations they claim to serve. Next, agricultural failures and the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa, AGRA, co-founded by the Gates Foundation, aims to double yields and incomes for 30 million households by 2020. However, independent evaluations indicate a significant failure. Will they also fail with this new injection? Yes, we assume yes, they will fail to eliminate AIDS in Africa by 2043. So if they're going to fail anyways, then our best bet would be intervention as soon as possible. I'm talking today intervention. We're talking about the AGRA failure, food insecurity. Since AGRA's inception, food insecurity is its largest regions has reportedly increased by 31%. That's nearly a third. That's a huge increase. And it's been in place was to eliminate these problem of poverty by 2020. It increased 31%. Funding flows. While the Gates Foundation aims to prioritize African farmers, data suggests that out of nearly $6 billion spent on agriculture from 2003 to 2020, approximately $5 billion flowed to Western research institutions and Western corporations. Third, monoculture versus agroecology. And I need someone to tell me, can you hear me now? They said there was no sound earlier today. If there's still no sound, you've got to tell me that. And if I don't hear it from you, I'm just going to keep on speaking. I don't have someone here in the studio to do quality control. It's a one-person operation over here, and many times the one-person operation comes up short. I can double check it over here. I don't. Okay, I do hear myself I have one monitor on over here. So monoculture versus agroecology. Critics argue the foundation promotes chemically intensive monoculture and genetically modified seeds, undermining traditional African agroecology. Next, let's talk about medical and contraceptive controversies. The Bill and Melinda Gates healthcare interventions have faced allegations of ethical misconduct and the promotion of high-risk products, such as Depo-Provera from Sayana Press, it's called. Depo-Provera, despite research, some funded by the Gates Foundation, showing that DMPA, the injectable Depo-Provera, is associated with a 1.5-fold, 1.5 times increased risk of HIV acquisition and a 2.2-fold increased risk of invasive breast cancer. The foundation has continued the mass distribution of these injectables to African women. Now, I put the book out, it came out just a couple of months ago, in which that effort by Melinda Gates Foundation was exposed. Bill Gates is focusing on food and altering the genetics, etc., and putting in systems of health interventions, and both of them are problematic. But Melinda Gates is specifically coming after African women with this injectable Depo-Provera. It's estimated that over 75 million women are using this drug, and one of the serious side effects of using the injectable Depo-Provera is osteoporosis, the dissolving of our bones. Our bones are not only getting weak, but as the bones dissolve, the blood lead levels increase very significantly. And we're talking about many of the women on this are breastfeeding their babies. Come on, y'all. Come on. Vaccine trial ethics. In India and various African nations, Gates funded trials for HPV, malaria, and meningitis vaccines have been accused of, quote, uninformed consent. reports, 1 second here, let me page turn and get on the page first before I can turn the page. Reports indicate that in some cases, headmasters signed consent forms for minors, and vulnerable families were pressured into participation without adequate medical follow-up. And we, across the diaspora, we have the resources that we could intervene. It's being funded from here. Much of the funding for these efforts come from your and my contributions to Microsoft and Bill Gates' stake in that corporation. Yet, by and large, we are pretty much paralyzed. I do see your note, hearing you loud and clear. Thank you very much for Africa One, my beloved sister. I do appreciate that. And I will put up that audio. It will be streaming a little bit later today. I'll put it up. It'll be streaming from my TuneIn app. And I encourage everybody to use our TuneIn app as best as you can. You can get it from my posts daily on Facebook and other places. But you can just go to TuneIn, install the app, and look for LIB Radio on the TuneIn app. I'm switching more and more to that because it's the other formats we've been using are rather heavy on data and uploading and downloading, and that's become a problem over here. Biopiracy and genetic colonialism. This is, of course, the book Biocolonialism. The foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates, is accused of enclosing the genetic commons. Enclosing the genetic commons, meaning put a fence around the commons, that which Africa shares with Africans. Through, point one, seed banking, substantial investment in genome mapping, example given, DivSeek, could allow a handful of corporations to own the diversity of millions of crop ascensions. Millions of crop ascensions in the hands of a few biophilanthropists, colonialists, imperialists around the world. I call them biocolonialists. Point two, GMO banana product. Here they come with their genetic substitution genes for a high beta carotene banana were taken from a Papua New Guinea variety without the consent of indigenous peoples, leading to charges of biopiracy. Next, we're talking about diplomatic tensions between Israel and the Gaza war backlash. South Africa's vocal opposition to Israel's military actions in Gaza and its leadership in the International Court of Justice genocide case have fundamentally altered its diplomatic standing. Israel, in retaliation, is alleged to be, and I'm saying alleged to be because I don't have the absolute proof of this, but there appears to be substance for believing this is true. They're alleged to be launching a charm offensive to secure allies within the SADC region. Now, one of my friends, I put this information in the hands of my African collaborators because I do now more and more collaborate with Africa. And one of my collaborators is an advisor to a king in South Africa. And he wrote back to me when I put up this larger story. He wrote back to me and he said two things. Number one, invited me to come to Senegal this November, and to the best of my abilities, I'm going to be there in Senegal at the end of the Festac. It's not at the end of it, it's part of the Festac facilities. And he invited me to do a keynote presentation on this research that I'm sharing with you today. But he also said most likely it was Israel behind the xenophobia, manipulating through the press South Africans' emotional responses and turning brother against brother on the continent with the quote unquote xenophobic attacks on Nigerians and Ghanaians. I cannot and will not even think of ruling that out, but I don't have the confirmatory evidence of that. But we do have the confirmation of this so-called Israeli charm offensive. Zambia re-engagement. In 2025, Israel reopened its embassy in Lusaka for the first time in 52 years. Analysts view this as a strategic move to erode regional support for South Africa's pro-Palestine stance. And point two, diplomatic enclaves. Israel maintains strong ties with South Sudan and Ethiopia, using aid and military support to build influence. South Sudan remains one of the few African nations to consistently support Israel at the United Nations. Also, South Sudan is targeted, well, actually, it's not directly targeted, as Sudan is targeted for the Greater Israel project that we documented in Game Theory for master's level study. There was a chapter called The Parallel Logics of Expansion. It talked about the Greater Israel project, and it also talks about the Greater America project. Let me just share a little bit of this. Greater Israel project. Origins to perpetual warfare. That's a subchapter. It begins on page 90. I also begin each of these chapters with a very relevant quote. Let me share with you this quote from Ilan Pappé, author of The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine. He wrote, "All modern states are built on conquest, dispossession, and the erasure of prior peoples. What distinguishes the present moment is not the logic itself. It is the brazenness from which that logic has been returned to the surface of official speech. When presidents and prime ministers openly discuss the acquisition of territory, the removal of populations, and the renaming of geography, they are not innovating, they're simply dropping their mask." From Ilan Pappé, author of Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine. On page 90, I write, Greater Israel Project. Origins to perpetual warfare. The intellectual foundation of Greater Israel traces to Theodor Herzl, the father of modern political Zionism, who wrote in his diary in the late 19th century of a, quote, Jewish state extending from the brook of Egypt to the Euphrates. This was not a peripheral fantasy. It was a formally articulated territorial objective. It has never been fully left the ideological architecture of the Zionist project. In 1982, Israeli journalist Oded Yinon gave this vision its most explicit modern strategic expression. His plan, circulated among Israeli policy circles, proposed that Israel could secure regional dominance not through direct conquest alone, but through the deliberate fragmentation of neighboring Arab states along ethnic and sectarian lines into smaller, weaker, more manageable entities. Iraq was identified as a centerpiece to be divided into a Kurdish north, a Sunni center, and a Shia south. Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and the Sudan were each targeted for analogous dissolution. Whether the Yinon plan constitutes a formal Israeli state policy or remains an aspirational ideological framework debated among strategists is, from a game theoretic perspective, a secondary question. What matters is the behavioral output. This pattern of Israeli military and diplomatic action across the 4 decades since Yinon published is consistent with its prescriptions. And it goes on and on. And I also do talk about Greater America. Oh, this is very important. I'm not going to read this. I will read it. By April 2026, more than 68,800 Palestinians had been confirmed killed since October 7, 2023, with the actual toll substantially higher given the thousands buried under rubble. At least 463 Palestinians, including 157 children, had starved to death during the November 2024 to October 2025 reporting period alone. Israel had demolished over 1,500 additional buildings following a declared ceasefire, while Israeli military control extended over 53% of Gaza's territory. The UN report was ambiguous. Forcible transfers, it found, appeared aimed at disable a permanent displacement. Senior Israeli officials had openly stated that ethnic cleansing was a central objective of the war. The badge worn by an IDF soldier in 2024 depicting a map of Greater Israel extending from the Nile to the Euphrates and encompassing Egypt, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia was not the expression of a fringe view. It was the visual significance of a project that had been in motion since Herzl's diary, Theodore Herzl's diary. Then I talk about Americans' expansionism. We talk about Greater America, renaming the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America, Trump's corollary to the Monroe Doctrine, Operation Absolute Resolve, and the two playbooks should be read together. That's why the United States and Israel are so close, because they both have ambitions of unlimited imperial conquest. It's not going to work. It's going to fail. But try telling anything truthful or prophetic to Donald Trump. See how far that gets you. We are back again in our document. Now, Israel's charm offensive, observer status, and AU expulsions. The South Africa, the Southern, not the South Africa, the African Union has become a primary battleground for this conflict between Israel and South Africa. Suspension. Israel's observer status at the AU was suspended following pressure from South Africa and Algeria. Expulsions. In recent years, high-level Israeli diplomats have been unceremoniously removed from AU summits in Addis Ababa, reflecting a broader continental distancing. The third part of our dialogue today deals with domestic crises, migration, and xenophobia. South Africa is currently experiencing a backlash against foreign nationals, which has led to widespread fear and mass repatriations. From the government's perspective, President Cyril Ramaphosa has rejected the quote xenophobia unquote label, framing the issue as an economic and administrative challenge. Talking about migration pressure, Ramaphosa described the tension as a result of quote uneven economic development unquote across the continent, where South Africa's more developed status attracts those seeking opportunity. And I must say that South Africa's more developed status is also attracting significant numbers, could be much, much more, could be always, but significant numbers of Africans migrating to the continent. South Africa is one of the primary destinations. Why? Because they see in South Africa quite a bit of a parallel existence in as we are currently enjoying, quote unquote, in America. But that is a bit of an illusion, because as many people said, until all Africans are free, no Africans are free. Until all Africans enjoy the benefits of the wealth of the nation, and when the benefits of the wealth of the nation go into the hands of 6 or so billionaires in Africa, and especially in Southern Africa, where we have the Oppenheimers and other groups of billionaires in the mining industries. Until all of that is resolved, we, a luta continua, the struggle will continue. And the impact of anti-immigrant sentiment. Oh, I missed this paragraph. Continental solutions. In talks with Kenyan President William Ruto, Ramaphosa called for African-led solutions and deeper economic integration to alleviate the pressure on South African public services. Now, I can definitely agree with that. I'm not necessarily convinced that President William Ruto is the right partner for this. I think he could have gone to Kagame of Rwanda, could have been working with, probably has been working with President Museveni of Uganda, etc. William Ruto, in my mind, up until he came to the United States, I think it was in the fall of 2022, and had a summit meeting with then Sleepy Joe Biden. Up until then, I was a huge William Ruto advocate, very much so. But when he came back from that summit with the American leader, he had changed, very obviously changed. And until that change reflects something positive for Africa, William Ruto is on our suspicion list. I'm not disputing him as a human being, but it is his governance that we have to question. I'm just going to kind of leave it at that, because personally, I love Kenya. And if I had to move to Kenya tomorrow under President William Ruto, I would be on the first plane. But we've got work to do. The impact of anti-immigrant sentiment. Despite government rhetoric, the reality on the ground is severe. There's been mass repatriation. Multiple countries have initiated the evacuation of their citizens, including Nigeria, over 1,000 citizens, Ghana, over 700, and Malawi, the former South Rhodesia. Institutional crackdowns, or Southern Rhodesia it was called. Institutional crackdowns. The South African government has unveiled plans for a biometric population register and stricter migration controls to address, quote, undocumented migration, unquote, amid protests. The idea of biometric population registration, isn't that the old Kipande pass now coming back as digital? That's not going to be good. That you're going to have a biometric pass to walk the streets of South Africa. Oh boy. Same thing could and probably is already happening in the United States. Next, the social medical landscape, HIV data and treatment. South Africa's history with HIV/AIDS is marked by tension between mathematical modeling and ground level reality. Now, most of you have probably never heard the following. This came years ago when this was under President Thabo Mbeki. Rian Milan was a journalist in South Africa writing for Rolling Stone magazine. And when the controversy between Thabo Mbeki and the Western AIDS establishment that had embedded itself in South Africa, when that controversy reached a head, I was involved in this. I remember speaking in New York in UN Plaza at a rally called Hands Off Thabo Mbeki. I said he was absolutely right to question and challenge the legitimacy of the HIV research. Rian Milan stepped up as a journalist. Initially, he aimed to prove how ridiculous and ludicrous was the position taken by President Thabo Mbeki. So therefore, he started researching it for himself. He went to funeral directors, casket makers. He went to all of these places where you would expect to see the huge toll that they were saying was taking place in Azania, South Africa. Guess what? He couldn't find it. He said, if there is this massive explosion of AIDS in Africa, where are the bodies? He wasn't the only one to say that. There was a well-known Ghanaian doctor who said the same thing. If there is this huge toll of HIV deaths in Africa, where are the bodies? Because they did not exist in South Africa. They did not exist in West Africa, Ghana. So in 2003, author Rhiannon Milan challenged the AIDS apocalypse narrative, suggesting that death figures were systematically inflated. And you really need to go back and read that article from Rhiannon Milan. And I have Rhiannon Milan, I have that article up on my desktop. I'm going to put it up here in the folder or on the page so that you can have access to it. Bear with me, I've got a lot of things open on my desktop. We're looking at BBC, fine, BBC, was it the BBC or the Guardian? It was the Guardian. Guardian. Find that on the page, and it is an HTTP. And this is the article from the Guardian, written by Rory Carroll in Johannesburg. This is from December 20th, 2003. I'm pushing that article up right now, not in private, but in all, 2003. And there it is up for you. Please do check out this article. Please don't ignore it. Rory Carroll in Johannesburg from theguardian.com. Read it and understand the controversy. I introduced how Rhiannon Milan entered the controversy, so you really could start before there, but this article will bring you right up. Let me just read briefly from it. Rhiannon Milan's crime is not just saying the unsayable, but saying it so well. He has picked the one cause which unites almost everyone, from George Bush to Bono, and has declared it a con. Africa, says Milan, is not dying of AIDS at all. The apocalypse that you hear about, the tide of death leaving a continent of pensioners and orphans, is not happening. It is a conclusion that has transformed a celebrity into a self-obsessed moral leper. The self-confessed, not self-obsessed, self-confessed moral leper, accused of trying to derail worthy causes. Milan has ruined dinner parties, broken friendships, attracted ridicule from experts, and fought with his wife. Now he has just upped the stakes with a cover story in Britain's Spectator magazine, warning that $20 billion could be blown in the next few years in response to exaggerated estimates about the disease's impact in Africa. Quote, "It seems to me that AIDS fever is nearing the danger level and that some calming thoughts are called for," he writes. And so I'm going to come out of that, and we're going to talk about everyone ignored him. Now, that was 2003. Now, 23 years later, they're rolling out a new vaccine specifically for Africans. And I, to say the least, am really pissed. I hope that's not cussing. Modern prevention. The lenacapavir rollout. Lenacapavir. Len, they're calling it. Contrasting well-deserved skepticism of the early 2000s, South Africa is now rolling out a world-first prevention strategy, unquote, using Western manufactured pharmaceuticals. The 6-monthly jab. This is jabbed twice a year. Lenacapavir, Len, is a capsid inhibitor injected twice a year. It has shown near perfect protection in trials, claim the Western manufacturers. Strategic goal is modeling suggests that if 1 to 2 million high-risk individuals take the shot annually, South Africa could end AIDS as a public health problem within 18 years. And I completely disagree with what they're talking about, because they haven't even defined AIDS in South Africa, across Africa. They're using the, what was it called? The Bangui definition. Real quickly, let me show you this. I'm going to read this. I'm not going to show it to you. The Bangui definition. What is the quote Bangui definition of HIV/AIDS in Africa? The 4 conditions. The Bangui definition. Let me give you the 4 conditions. And that's terrible writing. The Bangui definition is a 1985 WHO surveillance tool for identifying potential HIV/AIDS cases in African countries lacking HIV antibody tests. Why are they lacking HIV antibody tests? Because we all knew that the HIV antibody tests didn't work in Africa because they cross-reacted. It assigns scores to conditions such as pronounced malnutrition, 4 points, cancer, 4 points, and immunosuppressive treatment, 4 points, with the diagnosis of AIDS established when the total score reaches 12 or higher. Boy, that is really messed up. Overview of the Bangui definition is a surveillance tool developed by the World Health Organization in 1985, created to identify potential cases in African countries where HIV antibody testing was not widely available. This definition used clinical symptoms and signs to establish the likelihood of seropositivity, meaning your blood is positive for the antibodies, the antigens. That means you have been exposed and your body fought it off. Now, that in itself is really messed up. And it was proven by in a paper written by Christine Johnson from UCLA, epidemiological mathematician. She proved that there were over 70 conditions that cause false positive tests. Now, I don't want to go too deep into that research right now. I do have the book. It's available. The Great AIDS Swindle. The debate over the cause of AIDS has produced a heated exchange between the AIDS establishment and a growing body of more than 600 prominent researchers, scientists, and journalists. Over 600, and I'm in that 600. The literature that's out there mentions my name more than once. And we do cite Nobel Prize winners. There's Dr. Gilbert. What's his name? Dr. Walbert Gilbert. Won a Nobel Prize for Chemistry 1980 and professor of molecular biology at Harvard University. He says this of Peter Duesberg's research. Duesberg is the foremost retrovirologist in the world. He said Duesberg is absolutely correct in saying that no one has proven that AIDS is caused by the AIDS virus. And it is absolutely correct that the virus cultured in the laboratory may not be the cause of AIDS. I would not be surprised if there were another cause of AIDS and that HIV is not involved. You've never heard that, have you? You never heard that. But I wrote that in 1997, I think, 1997. So the book is nearly 30 years old, 40 years old. Copyright 1998 with a 2022 update of the book. I changed the cover, changed the title, and updated the book. We do the best we can, but doggone it, our people are going to have to start reading again. We are back in the document, and let me share once again. Access issues. Currently, LEN is available for free free drugs, free pharmaceutical drugs from your historical enemy. Currently available at 360 government clinics in 6 provinces. That means the government under Cyril Ramaphosa is guilty in collaborating with this insidious plan. Available in 6 provinces though the country relies on branded doses from Gilead Sciences until cheaper generics become available in 2027. So branded doses, that means Gilead Sciences is getting over like a fat rat right now. They can charge what they want to charge. The most clinically relevant side effects are injection site reactions first, then immune, quote, reconstitution syndrome as the key serious warning. Injection site reactions can include persistent nodules and induration, and improper intradermal injection has been associated with serious reactions. Ranked by clinical importance, reactions include injection site reactions, most common adverse reaction, 65%. Immune reconstitution syndrome, important warning, can include autoimmune disorders, autoimmune diseases. Third, persistent nodules, induration at the injection site. 4, serious injection site reactions if the drug is given intradermally instead of subcutaneously. If they give it inside your blood vessels as opposed to under the skin. And nausea, the other common adverse reaction, 4%, because the source only clearly identifies 2 common adverse reactions. This is a severity focus ranking rather than a full frequency ranking. Next, future outlook. And I am incredibly optimistic about South Africa and the SADC region. I am incredibly optimistic for many reasons. You read my book, so you know about my optimism. Africa Rising, Dawn is breaking over Africa. It's not a big book, so it's easy to read for those of you who don't like to read. It is a good book. You're going to like it. You did read my book, The African Future, Empowering a United and Prosperous Africa for Future Generations. The African future is bright and promising, a beacon of hope and inspiration for the world with a unified vision. So you read those books, so you know why I am so optimistic despite the myriad of problems. As South Africa moves further towards solidifying its role as a majority black superpower, its regional leadership is being redefined by both internal pressures and external interference. The impact on the SADC future. This is very important. Point: economic integration. Increased focus on the African Continental Free Trade Area to balance trade and reduce migration pressures. Point: regional security. South Africa continues to play a mediation role in conflicts, example given in Sudan, though this is challenged by Israel's arms and aid diplomacy with individual member states. And let me tell you, what Israel is doing there is very, very sinister. And here, 1 second. Okay. Demographic shifts. This is a very important. The emergence of white South African refugees in the U.S. Midwest, fleeing a merely perceived targeting for instability, highlights the shifting domestic demographics and political landscape. And next point, technological sovereignty. The move toward local manufacturing of medicines like lenacapavir signifies a push for pharmaceutical independence from Western, quote, white savior philanthropy. The intersection of these crises that we pointed out today suggests that South Africa's future will depend on its ability to maintain regional unity within the SADC region while asserting a foreign policy that resists external diplomatic divide and rule tactics. Let me reread that. The intersection of these crises suggests that South Africa's future will depend on its ability to maintain regional unity within SADC while asserting a foreign policy that resists external diplomatic divide and rule tactics. And that's exactly what Israel is involved in, diplomatic divide and rule. I do see my sister has a comment. I like PLO Lumumba's concept of rebranding Africa as a country made up of provinces and presidents becoming provincial governors. You're absolutely right. I sat with Professor PLO Lumumba, absolute brilliant man. To be in his presence is to be in the presence of absolute genius. You know he's an absolute genius. And he recognizes what I brought to him, brought to the table. I gave him, I think, a total of 14 or 15 of my books at one time. And his secretary told me, told us that he probably will have read all of the books within a week or two. And he's a very, very busy man, but he's brilliant and he speed reads. So thank you, Pilo Lumumba. I was with two of my friends, and the one brother, Brian, was our driver. Brian's a brilliant young man, very young brother, and he speaks like 5-6 languages. He serves as a translator. He spent a lot of time in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and he is in Nairobi, Kenya. That's his home. And I was with my other friend, Meredith, who Meredith is, in my mind, he's what I want to be. If I could become any other person, useful person, Meredith is the man. He is brilliant. I respect him. We both respect PLO Lumumba and others of that irk. And Meredith, I'm talking about you, man. You are absolutely wonderful, beloved by everyone who's ever met you. Meredith is humble and very well informed about an incredible broad set of affairs. He's also a king. He's a king in the not Buganda, what's it called? The Bakolokoi. He's advisor to the king in the Bakolokoi kingdom of Southern Africa. That's inside of South Africa as a separate kingdom. And he's also a king in Ghana. And to say the absolute least, he's a beautiful brother who I have the greatest respect for. And I told him, at any given time you ever need me for anything except for borrowing money, it's a little joke between he and I, call me and I will not only perform for you, but this will be among the best calls you could make. So I agree with you, Sister for Africa One. I love PLO Lumumba's concept of rebranding Africa as a country made up of provinces and presidents becoming provincial governors. That's a very, very good one. And there are some of the presidents of Africa who are more qualified to end governance than others. There are some outstanding presidents. The president of Namibia, whose name escapes me right now, she's brilliant. The president of Rwanda, Paul Kagame, is brilliant. The president and prime minister of Ethiopia, the president is a female and the prime minister is Abiy Ahmed, are brilliant, brilliant people. Africa has great leadership in Nigeria, great leadership, impactful leadership in Ghana, great leadership in Dahomey. We have plenty to be proud of. And I could just go through and just start naming these African leaders. There are so many of them that are wonderfully qualified. There are some that are duds, stools of the West. Of course, we cannot talk about great leadership without mentioning His Eminence Ibrahim Traore, the president of Burkina Faso, and his other co-regents, presidents of the first African Federation, not the first, but the second African Federation, the Confederation of Sahel States, CSS. Most people are still unaware, even Pan-Africans, most are unaware that on July 6, 2024, Africa gave birth to a new nation. That was when three formerly independent nations merged together. And it's still the process. It takes a while to merge together your nation with another nation, but the process is still ongoing. And that is the Confederation of Sahel States. So, and then the first federation in Africa is actually Tanzania, Zanzibar and Tanganyika. They merged together somewhere after World War II, and they became one nation as well. So we're very proud of these African United States. And the term United States of Africa is an inappropriate term. We should more look at it as the African Union, because the United States, that terminology is taken up by Mr. Trump's ilk and Mr. Biden's ilk and the other ilk of these leaders of America, including Barack Obama. I was not a fan. But Barack Obama, I can't say he was a bad person, but I will say undeniably he was a bad government leader, bad governance, and he sold us, the workers, out and gave all this money to the bankers in the aftermath of the housing debacle crises. He gave billions in support to the executives of these corporations that tanked the global economy. Bailed them out and did not bail out the homeowners. I was one of the ones who lost my investment in a home. Not necessarily because of him bailing them out, but definitely because he did not step forward to bail me out. So we have come to the end of an hour of broadcast. I'm going to cut it right now because I'm not getting much feedback from my listening audience. I did the best I could today to put something serious on the table. I used a bunch of different resources. I created these different slideshows and things. There's one more thing I want to share here before I go. Screen share. I'm going to go once again over here to Notebook LM, and I'm going to share a slideshow that I prepared for today, and it is entitled Geopolitical and Social Medical Crises in South Africa, a comprehensive briefing. And let me make sure, no, that's not the one. I'm looking for African sovereignty and foreign intervention. That's the one. And let me just go ahead. Let's go right into the screen show. It's got about 14 different screens, so this is probably going to take another 20 minutes. Bear with me. I hope you do find this to be enjoyable. I went through this real quickly earlier, and I found it's very comprehensive. I know it's comprehensive, but it also is a consequence of good information. Let's just go through it. The sovereignty dialectic, foreign intervention versus domestic agency in Africa. That's a typo. A critical analysis of public health rollouts, philanthrocapitalism, and geopolitical maneuvering. First, there is the public health and bio-innovation. Next, we're going to look at philanthrocapitalism and accountability. And then we're looking at geopolitics and regional diplomacy. Analytical framework, the tension between imposed solutions and sovereign action. So, foreign intervention from top down. Its characteristics: external funding, lack of democratic accountability, condition attached aid, and technological imposition. The associated behaviors, philanthrocapitalism, which is not good at all, diplomatic leverage, and non-consensual medical trials on African bodies. But then that's weighed against African agency, meaning we now are in charge of our destiny. It's from the bottom up. The characteristics: state-led initiatives, regional integration, domestic resource mobilization, structural reform, associated behaviors, sovereign health rollouts, Pan-African diplomacy, the African Continental Free Trade Area, and the International Court of Justice litigation. Sustainable development and ethical outcomes consistently correlate with high domestic agency and structural accountability. The justifier intervention, the estimator quote unquote disconnect. The justifier intervention, the projection: 17 million predicted deaths in South Africa from HIV and AIDS. That was the prediction. AIDS is the most political disease ever, and the key battleground is fought with a deadly weapon, the estimate. That quote from Rian Milan, who did challenge the AIDS figures in his country and found out that the Western researchers and the media, they were lying. The 17 million predicted deaths, hey, they're called anything an AIDS death in South Africa. I know this is a fact. I've been checking this out over the years. People would be involved in a car accident, a fatal car accident, but if the person lived for a day or two after the accident and died of an infection or an inability to fight an infection, they would call it an AIDS death, an acquired immune deficiency syndrome. So on the right-hand side, the reality check, 1999 South African deaths, the epimodal prediction was there would be 250,000 deaths. The actual revised model, 92,000 people died, where they were expecting 17 million. In actuality, by 1999, only 92,000 people died, so-called, of HIV and AIDS. And the HIV prevalence, they had modeled the prevalence at 12%. The actual rate who tested positive on a test that's absolutely bad technology, 3%. Statistical inflation drives massive top-down foreign funding architectures. That's the philanthrocapitalism, sidelining accurate local data and structural realities. You probably never heard this, but this is the reality. I've known about it all along, but we've just been trying the best we could to get the word out. And unfortunately, far too few people were interested. Here real quickly. Okay, I'm on the next slide. Philanthrocapitalism and the quote, green revolution failure. The funding flow. Western research institutions, multinational corporations. $5 billion in funding flow going into Africa between 2003 and 2020 toward African farmers. But AGRA, the African Green Revolution, missed targets. The Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa aimed to double yields for 30 million households by 2020. The result? Independent evaluation by Mathematica found food insecurity actually increased by 31% since AGRA's 2003 founding. And AGRA is Bill Gates' puppy. Case study, genetic colonialism. Case study, GMO banana project. Genes for high beta carotene extracted from a Papua New Guinea banana cultivar without indigenous consent or benefit sharing, despite hundreds of naturally high beta carotene cultivars already existing. The pirates, they just take what they want and impose it upon us. Quite often, we're readily accepting him. That's why religion has been such a decimating people, because they just give us religion and we just accept it. Why? Because we're told it is the word of God Almighty. Public health philanthropy, exporting risk, the DMPA contraceptive controversy. This is Melinda Gates Foundation, mainly here. The 2012 to 2014 initiative by the Gates Foundation, USAID, and Pfizer to ship 130 million doses of injectable Depo-Provera, DMPA. Also, now they call it Cyanopress. Sounds like a media company, but no, it's a drug. To HIV endemic sub-Saharan Africa at $1 per dose. It's being subsidized very heavily. But the documented risks include hazard number 1, HIV acquisition, PLOS medicine. 2015 meta-analysis of 37,000 women showed a 1.5-fold increased risk of HIV acquisition. Lancet HIV found in 2015 a 53% higher risk versus net N. I don't know what net N means, but let's just say not taking the drug. Hazard 2, breast cancer. Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center 2012 found a 2.2-fold increased risk of invasive breast cancer after 12 plus months of use of injectable Depo-Provera. Bioethicist Obianuju Ekoocha highlights these products carry severe warnings in Western nations, but are mass distributed to vulnerable populations, effectively bypassing informed consent. It's an outrage. And I have the book over here. You should be outraged by now. Someone, of the dozens of people who order the book very quickly, someone should have stepped up. But I'm not seeing any evidence of that. Maybe my sister in USVI, Dr. Chin Zara, maybe she was in a good position to step up, because I know Dr. Chin very well. She's an activist, she's an organizer, and women's maternal health concerns are very, very important to her, as they are very important to you and I. Public health, the technological top-down, the AI super antigen. Oh boy, here it comes, here it comes. This is, I didn't put this into today's report, I should have, but now we're putting it in. The super antigen funnel. Genomic input. Multiple fragmented genetic codes of various coronaviruses. Multiple fragmented genetic codes. These are the same ones that will show up in the PCR, or RT-PCR test that Dr. Carrie Mullis talked about. These multiple fragmented genetic codes will amplify themselves and show up as full viruses. So to take this AI designed vaccine is suicide. It's just straight up suicide. It's going to diagnose you with a deadly disease in the aftermath. Are you cool with that? The AI analysis engine. Professor Jonathan Heaney from the University of Cambridge utilizes AI to stay ahead of the curve of viral mutation. The super antigen output. The AI synthesizes a single antigen designed to train the immune system against the entire family of viruses. Well, if you're talking about an antigen training the immune system, you're talking about a DNA altering mechanism. The first AI designed antigen trialed in humans Initial safety trial, 39 people, safe, modest impact. Upcoming 200-person efficacy trial plus adaptations for Ebola and H5N1 bird flu. Oh my gosh. We got to warn our people. I'm going to send this panel today. It's got a couple of corrections I need to put in it. But I'm going to send this group of slides today. I'm going to send it to Azania, South Africa. And hopefully, of my contacts there, they will understand how they are being targeted. Going forward, the state-led agency, South Africa's LEN rollout. They're talking about the free drug rolling out in 360 different government clinics, actively stocking it up right now. The strategic goal, objective is to end AIDS as a public health threat by 2043. Will require 18 to 36 million doses are required. The current status, the Global Fund provided 115,000 branded doses from Gilead to start. And of course, it has not become generic yet, and we don't want it to become generic. We want it gone. We want it eliminated. And African solutions, such as the what was it called? The COVID organics solution, created by the presidents of Madagascar, along with the President John Pemba Magufuli of Tanzania. That's what we need for our people, organic solutions. The sovereignty move. South Africa is not waiting for permanent foreign aid. SAPRA is a fast tracking, a priority review, 180 days for generic manufacturer Hetero, India, by January 2027. SINAC is actively evaluating local South African drug companies to manufacture LEN from scratch, ensuring long-term domestic supply security. It's as if they're contracting bullet makers locally to supply the bullets that are used to murder their brothers. Xenophobic wars. Brother killing brother. Internecine violence. Get the locals to manufacture the drugs that they will use to neutralize competition from South Africa for the future. There's a couple more panels. There's one more. The mechanics of lenacapavir. Lenacapavir. LEN, it's called. Number one, it talks about the hijacking. HIV virion is hijacking the glycoprotein spikes. Now, this is where your understanding of what we've been talking about, the extracellular vesicles, this is why you have to remember this stuff. You have to remember it. Extracellular vesicles. And there are no pictures of this taking place. So these schematics are computer driven based upon theoretical knowledge. Human CD4 cell, the immune cell, the spikes coming out of it, glycoprotein spikes, and the HIV virin is in those glycoprotein spikes, but the glycoprotein spikes are merely exosomes, projections from inside the cell. It has found fragments of stuff, it warning other cells about it, and that's what this projection that they call a virus really is about. Capsid inhibition. LEN specifically targets the virus's capsid shell, double protein lipid shell they call it, making it structurally impossible for the virus to enter the CD4 cell and replicate. But based upon what we know, these extracellular vesicles must enter new cells. That's what the body's designed them for, to carry pieces of genetic information to new cells. So if this LEN, this lenacapavir blocks this process, then a key process of our human immune system is no longer going to function. That is what they called earlier the restructuring of the immune system. immune restructuring. It was a term they used in the rep. I'll have the document more in my mind a little bit later. But that's absolutely, we can't have that happen. The 6-month depot, the initial dose requires 2 injections, 927 milligrams total, plus 4 oral pills. The subcutaneous depot then slowly releases the drug over 24 to 26 weeks, providing near perfect protection without daily pill fatigue. Let's go forward. The synthesis, the intervention matrix, philanthropy versus state agency. Under philanthrocapitalism, the Gates Foundation is the model. The primary actors, unelected billionaires, Western NGOs, multinational pharmas, Pfizer. The accountability mechanisms, minimal. Diplomatic immunity granted to them by President William Ruto of Kenya. He granted diplomatic immunity. They can do whatever they want in Kenya, and they will not go to jail. They will not be punished. Stated intent versus realized outcomes. The intent to double crop yields and provide contraception. The outcome, plus 31% food insecurity increase from Agra, and heightened HIV and cancer risk from injectable Depo-Provera. Consent and ethics, documented consent violations in trials, bypassing indigenous rights, biopiracy. What would the state-led agency, South African alien rollout, which I am not with it, Department of Health, SAPRA, SANAC, local government clinics are all participating. The democratic mandate, regulatory oversight, national budget allocation. Intent is to end AIDS by 2043. The outcome, 360 clinics actively providing highly efficacious, they say, PrEP to vulnerable groups. That's prevention strategy. Mandatory strict HIV testing protocols before each dose. Clinical counseling provided. Well, what if the strict mandatory HIV testing only shows more and more and more cases of a suspect antivirus or antigen present? Because the tests have a very high false positive potential, because the prevalence of the disease in the population is rather minuscule. And so therefore, the margin for error of the ELISA test, and last I heard it was 98.6, the margin for error of 2.4 was so much greater than the prevalence of the disease in the general population. It was so much more that for every, I know using the same analysis in this country, for every 6 people you would expect to find positive per 100,000 in the United States, the test actually found 200 people, the overwhelming majority of them false positives. Geopolitics, the aid to influence cycle. Step 1, arms, aid and arms deployment. Provision of agricultural, tech, healthcare aid, and military arms. Historical weapons sales to Rwanda, Uganda, and fueling civil war in South Sudan. Step 2, diplomatic entrenchment. Reopening embassies in financially desperate states. Example given, Gideon Sarr opening the Zambia embassy after a 52-year gap. Lusaka seeking investment after 2020 debt default. Step 3, international protection. Securing African votes, abstentions at the UN General Assembly. 154 resolutions against Israel, 2015 to 2023. And seeking African Union observer status. They want to sit in on our meetings and watch what we do and who says what. And step 4, legitimizing security policies. undermining unified African opposition to the Gaza conflict, controversial talks of transferring expelled Palestinians to fragile allies like South Sudan. And so it goes on and on. Lastly, we're on the panel, geopolitical diplomatic tactics, decision versus integration. Israel's strategy, divide and rule, targeting fragility, engaging states in economic distress, Zambia, or post-conflict fragility, South Sudan, to break regional consensus. Transactional leverage, trading agricultural training and surveillance technology for UN abstentions. Surveillance technology. That they share that with oppressive states. And then the third objective, dilute the influence of the SADC and bypass the African Union's pro-Palestinian stance. Versus sovereign integration. South Africa's strategy, structural solidarity. Global accountability, leading the International Court of Justice genocide litigation, utilizing international legal frameworks rather than covert arms deals. Regional integration, working alongside Kenyan President William Ruto, who cannot be trusted at this point, to bolster the African Continental Free Trade Area. And the objective, African solutions to African problems. Reforming the UN Security Council and global financial institutions to amplify sovereign African voices. So that takes us through, and one more panel to go. Sovereign solutions, migration, and economic integration. South Africans are not xenophobic. South Africans are Africans. The answer to ensure that services and opportunities exist everywhere across our continent. That from President William Ruto along with President Cyril Ramaphosa. Pillar 1, rejecting xenophobic narratives, reframing the issue from ethnic hatred to structural economic disparity. Migration to South Africa is a symptom of uneven development, not an inherent cultural conflict. And Pillar 2, the African Continental Free Trade Area solution, utilizing the free trade and visa-free travel arrangements initiated in 2022 between South Africa and Kenya to create shared prosperity. Deeper economic integration builds local job markets, reducing the localized strain on South Africa's public services and nullifying the need for foreign intervention in domestic security. And I think one more panel. I think it's one more. This is the last panel. The sovereignty spectrum, executive synthesis. We have this chart on the left-hand side at the top, the Cambridge AI super antigen, foreign, and that's external. So everything on the left is the current paradigm, the foreign, domestically derived sovereignty. We have the panel below that, immediately before that, foreign and detrimental. Gates DMPA rollout, definitely detrimental. The agriculture, it failed. Israeli arms to South Sudan is problematic, very problematic. And biopiracy, very problematic. But on the right-hand side, Africa's now sovereign solutions. South Africa's LIN HIV rollout, they're calling this a sovereign solution. I disagree completely. But they're talking about South Africa and Kenya's AFCFTA integration is a good thing. And Southern Africa's International Court of Justice litigation, I'm not so into it, even though it has the potential, and it's for a good reason. The origins of intervention are definitely domestic. So the data clearly indicates that interventions rooted in domestic agency, structural accountability, and regional integration consistently yield the most ethical and sustainable outcomes for the African continent. And that is the end of this presentation. I hope you did find it to be useful. I enjoy bringing this information to you. I really do. And tomorrow we're going to use the same book as I'm trying to do the best I can to teach game theory for master's level study as fast as I can to as many people as I can. Now let me tell you, Ed L. Mack, I see you in the house. He says, greetings. Ed, did I send you an invitation to join our Friday class? I am at this point, I've pretty much dropped everyone donating $20 per classroom. And I couldn't afford it, but I had to do it anyways because people were not showing up. And I suspect that paying $20 to learn everything that I just taught you in today's is people are having a hard time. And a lot of people, they don't want to hear it. Put their fingers in their ears and their heads buried in the asphalt. Well, where is your... It's in a faulty zone. But we're burying our heads in the sand. We don't want to hear it. People told me. You heard them say it multiple times yesterday on the mastermind group. People saying, hey, we don't want to learn all that hard stuff. We don't want to look over the horizon. We don't want to learn a whole new language as if we're learning French or Spanish or Italian or Portuguese so we could talk to other African people around the planet. We don't want that stuff. We just want to have a good time. We want to enjoy the playoffs. We want to go out clubbing on weekends. Gus said it in a way. A couple of other people said it as well. That it's too hard. It's too hard. So, do it anyways. It was hard for me to write the book. It was very hard for me to write the book. But how did I write the book? One page at a time, one chapter at a time. How do you eat an elephant? You invite the whole village to come over and feast. So it's not too hard. You saw what I did today. And this breakdown, this complex breakdown of what's happening in South Africa, we could take that analysis all across the continent. I am hearing back from my brothers and sisters in South Africa. The Ebola information, we had to send that there, and I got quite a bit of positive feedback, but also the use of Kenyan tech workers in promoting the idea of Sam Altman's vision of the occult behind AIs and the artificial general intelligence, which is yet to be rolled out. Those who are behind this say they're going to finish their bunkers before they roll it out, because they suspect the rest of us might go bonkers once we find out how destructive advanced general intelligence is going to be. So that information went to Kenya because the Kenyan workers were critical data processors, data input for that whole process. And it was like being hooked up to the matrix. They were just used as batteries. I did get that information to Kenya and got great feedback from it. And so on that note, I want to thank you for being a part of today's conversation. We've come a long way together. We've got a long way to go. But we are marching forward steady by steady, step by step, little by little. We are moving into a new destiny. And we should be very proud of who we are, what we do, and who we are doing it with. Tell your friends to tell their friends that we have our own now. And we're very proud of what we have. Very proud of what we do with what we have. We only need many, many more of you, our listening audience, to join us. Let's move together. Peace and prosperity.